Money Your Vote special election night coverage. Here with me for this historic night, Kelly Evans, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, John Harwood, and the entire CNBC News team.
As we come on the air tonight, polls are now closing in 6 states: Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia. And NBC News projects Donald Trump is the winner in Indiana. Of course, that's the home state of Trump's running mate, Mike Pence. NBC News also projecting Trump is the winner in Kentucky. And right now, NBC News projects Hillary Clinton is the winner in Vermont.
Georgia, right now, too close to call, according to NBC News. Democrats have not won that state since 1992. Virginia, too early to call at this time, though Clinton is leading. That's the home state of Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Kaine. NBC News says South Carolina, too early to call, though Trump is leading. Right now, Trump has 19 electoral votes. Clinton has 3.
John Harwood, you've said throughout this race it's been exotic and yet inherently stable. We're about to find out if that dynamic exists truly tonight.
That's right, and certainly one of the first signs was Indiana. If Hillary Clinton was winning a blowout victory, that was a state Barack Obama carried it in 2008. She's never expected to carry it this time, but if you had something really extraordinary happening, that was possible. I think the story of this election is the rival coalitions of these two candidates, and we're going to see tonight if they hold. For Donald Trump, it is white voters, specifically non-college white voters and non-college white men, rural residents. And for Hillary Clinton, African Americans, Latinos, women, and college-educated white women. If she can keep the numbers that she had brought into Election Day, she's going to be in good shape.
Indiana, the most reliant on intensive manufacturing. So it makes sense to see this result in Indiana, emblematic of what you're talking about in terms of the larger picture of the electorate here.
No question about it. This was one that even before Donald Trump picked Mike Pence for his ticket, he expected to win that state. But we've seen that the outlier scenario, the major route, that does not appear to be signaled by these results.
And just to bring you one result out of Politico, they've been doing these pollings with Morning Consult, where they're talking about the advantage among white voters without a college degree, having Donald Trump 65% to 29%. I mean, you can see the lines across which this country is divided, apparently coming into sharper focus tonight.
And that is a bigger gap than Mitt Romney had against Barack Obama in 2012. Mitt Romney won non-college white voters by 62 to 36. That's a little bit wider.
John, you mentioned those rival coalitions, including African Americans. And speaking of which, we are following a developing situation out of North Carolina, where the polls are scheduled to close in less than half an hour. But there is a movement to keep some polling locations open. Let's get to Scott Cohn in Raleigh with more on that. Good evening, Scott.
And indeed, Carl, the polls will stay open in at least a couple of precincts for longer than the 7:30 Eastern Time schedule. The State Board of Elections just agreeing to keep polls open for anywhere from about 25 minutes to an hour in a handful of precincts. It's only a handful of precincts, most of them in Durham County, which is a heavily Democratic county, because of delays that took place during the day. They had issues with the computer system that keeps track of the voter rolls. They weren't able to provide the forms to voters that say that they're authorized to vote. So in an emergency meeting just a short time ago, the State Board of Elections agreed to keep several precincts open. They do this precinct by precinct. At least one precinct in Durham County will stay open for an hour. That's the longest one. Another precinct in the southern part of the state in Columbia County open for 45 minutes longer. Again, this to make up for delays. Now, this is far short of what the Democratic Party, what the Clinton campaign, and what others have been pushing for. And in fact, there are lawsuits here now to try and extend that. So this is a continually developing situation.
All right, Scott, thank you. Polls in Indiana are now closed. Let's get to CNBC's Phil LeBeau, who's live in Terre Haute. Phil?
And Kelly, you mentioned about the number of voters who are non-college educated being really the core constituency for Donald Trump, who has now been declared the winner here in Indiana. What's interesting is that 56% of the voters in Indiana are non-college educated voters, so that really speaks to that constituency, that support for Donald Trump. The two other races that people are watching closely here in Indiana, the Senate race as well as the race for governor. The race for governor, too close to call, according to NBC News, but the race for Senate, it's also too close to call, though Todd Young, the Republican, is leading in that race. Remember, it wasn't long ago people said Evan Bayh pretty much has this wrapped up as the Democrat running here in Indiana. It'll be interesting to see what happens when those final results come in a little later on tonight. Guys, back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Phil. We've got a huge night here on Tap at CNBC. Reporters fanned out across the country in the battleground states, getting the voice of the people, the mood of the electorate, and the latest on the hot-button issues at the heart of this campaign. We've got both election headquarters covered. We have Eamon Javers at Clinton headquarters, Scott Wapner with the Trump team, both of them in New York City. Steve Leisman will be here all night crunching the numbers of all the exit polls. And standing by, our all-star lineup of analysts from both sides of the aisle.
Tonight, we're adding something special to our election coverage plan. We're calling it the CNBC Decision Zone. Throughout the evening, we will keep you on the pulse of the vote by taking you across America and around the world, leveraging the massive news-gathering footprint of CNBC and the NBC family to bring you close to 100 sources of live news. We want to take you beyond the big pictures and get you up close and personal in the battleground states and the key races that will decide the nation's balance of power. For example, right now, you're looking at local coverage from NBC affiliates in Des Moines, Iowa, Columbus, Ohio, Las Vegas, Nevada, a live shot of the White House, plus what's happening on NBC News and MSNBC. One more thing, we're doing all of this with limited commercial interruption. You do not want to miss a minute of this critically important election.
Let's now get to our senior economics reporter, Steve Leisman, who's got the latest on those exit polling results, which are being released at this hour. Steve?
Yeah, Kelly, I want to pick up on what you and John Hart were just talking about, the critical issue of how college-educated versus non-college-educated voters voted. First, let's look at how they came out. 36%, 36, just about even in 2012. A slight advantage now for white college graduates as part of the number who voted. The percent who voted so far are white college. 37% right there are white college. Now let's look at how they voted here. You can see in the next screen here, Democratic candidate in 2012, 42 versus 46 now, so a little bit better for the white college graduates. And 56-47 on the other one there. So let's move on now to one of the things, how the white non-college year educated voted here. Democrat 36-62 on the non-college and 29-64. One other thing I want to show you, according to early NBC News exit polls, the economy is the #1 issue. 52% say it was the economy, terrorism 18%, foreign policy 13%, immigration way down there at just 12%. But how did these economy voters vote? Take a look. Economy voters are tilting towards Clinton in these early exit polls. 53% of those said the economy is the most important issue, voted for Clinton, and 39% for Trump. We'll have more on this as the evening goes by, Kelly.
And Steve, it's also the vote of women so much in focus tonight, and whether it's the suburban women or the college-educated women or just the sheer turnout of women in some of these states in the early voting and as far as we're learning tonight.
That's a big one we'll be watching as the evening goes by. It looked like we were running women versus men very similar to last year. The early exit polls were right on track, but John Harwood was focused on this one issue. I believe John said earlier that a Democrat has never won college-educated whites. Is that right, John?
No Democrat, Steve, in the history of polling has carried white college graduates. Now, that's why this is so remarkable if Hillary Clinton is able to neutralize that Republican advantage while winning an overwhelming majority of African Americans and Latinos. And remember one other thing. Every election for the last 7 or 8 elections, the share of vote in the United States cast by whites has gone down about 2 points. And so it went from 74 in 2008 to 72 in 2012.
I will point out on the other side, though, John, on the other side, it looked like the advantage on the non-college educated whites was bigger this time for Trump than it was for Romney. And the question is how those things balance out in the final vote.
Thanks, guys. All right, let's get our first pulse of the check of the mood of the presidential candidates tonight. We begin with our Eamon Javers. He's at Hillary Clinton's headquarters. Eamon.
Yeah, hi, Michelle. The stage is set here. The crowd is beginning to pour in, and they have just cranked up the party music here behind me. They are expecting a positive night here at the Hillary Clinton rally at the Javits Center in New York City. Hillary Clinton herself has written 2 versions of her speech, we are told. One for a positive outcome, one for a negative outcome. And imagine the tension and the emotion behind the scenes for the Hillary Clinton team and for Hillary Clinton herself. They have poured so much energy and so much effort into this campaign over the past year plus. Now tonight, it is pretty much all out of their hands. All that's left to do is see what the results are and come out here and give that speech, one or the other. Tonight, we are told that the Hillary Clinton campaign feels good. They feel like they put a good team together, and they feel like they closed strong. We'll see whether that was good enough later on tonight, guys. Back over to you.
Eamon, thank you for that. And now over to Scott Wapner, who is standing by at Trump's headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. Scott?
Carl, the first guests have started to arrive. They are in the room now. In fact, some cheers went up when some of those results were just released a short time ago. They're expecting 1,200 Trump supporters here tonight in what they hope will be a victory party. The Trumps, they are watching the returns at Trump Tower just a few blocks from here. They will make their way over here to the Hilton at some point later in the evening. Mr. Trump voted earlier today on the Upper East Side of Manhattan alongside his wife Melania and daughter Ivanka. One of the big questions going into this evening was, what would Donald Trump do if he was not victorious tonight? Would he publicly accept whatever the outcome today? He did file a lawsuit over early voting in Nevada. That was tossed out. Trump has also said today that he has heard about voting irregularities elsewhere. I did speak to Wilbur Ross, an outspoken Trump supporter, earlier on. He said he did see Mr. Trump this afternoon, described his mood as good. I asked whether he seemed upbeat or tense. Wilbur Ross said a little bit of both. Mr. Trump and family arriving later on this evening. Guys?
Scott Wapner at Trump headquarters. And speaking of Trump supporters, let's take a listen to Rudy Giuliani talking to Chris Matthews on MSNBC.
Safe. And these are communities that have been controlled by Democrats for 30, 40, 50 years without the intervention of a Republican or independent mayor who was able to straighten them out. You just go compare Chicago and New York, and you get a perfect comparison between a city that had a Republican and then an independent mayor who straightened it out, and a city that is over 600 murders this year already, 8 last weekend. Well, that's a
Rudy Giuliani talking to Chris Matthews on MSNBC. John, some discussion at this early stage of the game, obviously, that Georgia is too close to call. That's per NBC. What might that mean?
Well, Georgia has been growing more diverse, like many other states in the country, especially an influx of Hispanics into the state. And an influx of college-educated voters. African Americans have had a surge in turnout over the last couple of elections, always been a large share of the population. That's been one that, from the beginning of the campaign, was a stretch state for Hillary Clinton. People were wondering, is she going to make a big play there? Is there going to be an opportunity? There have been times in the fall that Hillary Clinton has been leading in the state of Georgia, but it appears that as Republicans have come home to Donald Trump, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen very, very late for Hillary Clinton, and not something that I think people are expecting.
The margin, it's been widely assumed, when you look at all of the possibilities of whether or not Donald Trump could win, they assume Georgia goes to him. I mean,
no question about it.
It's in there. So
if he's losing Georgia, he's losing a lot of other states.
It's absolutely over. But the margin by which he wins could be something telling, right? As we see these early numbers come in, if it's not looking good there, even if he's winning but not by much, it could tell us something bigger.
That's right, because it tells something about the composition of the electorate, who's turning out, and how big his margins are among whites.
In particular.
That's
right.
And there you see Georgia too close to call at this hour. We're just getting started here on CNBC, and we want to hear from you throughout the night. At the bottom of your screen, we're running some of your tweets in our Twitter. Tweet us at CNBC using the hashtag election2016. We're going to sneak in our first quick break, but don't go anywhere, because polls are about to close in these 3 states, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. And the results and instant analysis is straight ahead. You're watching Your Money, Your Vote election night coverage right here on CNBC. part of our all-star panel tonight. With us, CNBC senior contributor and informal Trump advisor Larry Kudlow, CNBC contributor and White House political director under George W. Bush, Sarah Fagan, and Democratic strategist and former White House aide under Bill Clinton, Keith Boykin. So a lot of White House experience here. Welcome, everybody. And from the early results, the exit polls, Larry, what to you stands out the most right now?
Well, the worst number I've heard came from Steve Leisman, my pal, who's a good reporter, on the exit polls regarding the economy, which is the #1 issue, which I've been saying now for, I don't know, how many months have we done this? #1 issue. And
I think it's years, Larry.
Years. It's the same every election.
And
what about it, though?
Right.
What about
and my
that
message
number?
doesn't change much. Well, look, this is the early exit polls, but Clinton 52, Trump 38 on the economy. On the economy.
For people who said the economy was their #1 issue, he said they went 52% for Clinton.
That is not a good number. It tells me that although he's been talking about this, for example, tax cuts and Obamacare and energy, he hasn't been selling it, okay? And I also noticed in his Rust Belt sweep in the last couple of days, he was talking very heavily about protectionism and 30% tariffs on companies that go overseas. Now, that looked very political to me, to tell you the truth. I do not agree with him on protectionism, as I think you all know. So, I don't know. His growth message, which was there, I don't know if he sold it in the last couple of weeks. That troubles me enormously, and I hope I'm wrong, because these are early exit polls.
Well, it wouldn't be surprising if those exit polls are right. The cake was largely baked in this election when you consider the President Obama's job approval rating over 50%. Unemployment, you know, matching basically what it was in 1988, the last time we saw the party hand the presidency over to another person from the same party. We have relatively low unemployment. We have a relatively popular president. We have a relatively good consumer confidence. That bodes well for the incumbent party.
What I was surprised about, Keith, is that one of the exit polls said that only 21% of the people voting for Hillary were doing it to vote for President Obama. So would you expect that number to be a little higher, or does that sound about right?
Well, I mean, I think we're continuing sort of the policies of President Obama, but I'm just astounded by listening to Larry and Sarah. I was like, where were you guys out this past 16 months? I wish you had been saying that before. I mean,
to his credit, other polls suggested Trump had the advantage on the economy.
That's right. See, this is a shift. An unhappy shift, if you ask me, but it's a shift.
But I think the thing about the economy is that this election was really never about the economy. And I've been saying this before, and Larry and I have discussed this before. Every election, presidential election, is usually about the economy. This election is different because Donald Trump is a different person. I think we're seeing that. The numbers here, even if Donald Trump does well tonight, it won't be because of the economy. It'll be because of the other issues that people are supporting.
I don't actually agree with that. I think almost all presidential elections are about the economy, and this one is too. And this economy is good enough for the incumbent party to deliver a president.
And when you slice and dice it a little bit more, when you look at the exit polls, when it comes to trade, Larry, for those who believe trade creates jobs, 48% of them, 48% of Clinton supporters believe that trade takes away U.S. jobs. 57% of Trump voters believe that.
Absolutely. And I think if you did a nationwide together, all parties, you'd see the same numbers. People believe trade takes away jobs. Now, look, I don't agree. I don't want this euphoria on the economy. I'm just not buying it. Incomes, take-home pay after tax, they're looking okay in the last few months, but they're not been okay.
It's not great, but it's good enough.
This has been part
we have employment less than 5%.
No, but Sarah, this is the populist revolt. Because incomes have done badly, because the overall economy is not. I mean,
It depends on where you live.
Before you go on,
Phil LeBeau has...
We've promised the benefits of this decision zone. Let's take a listen. I believe this is NBC's Ron Mott. Let's take a listen.
And, you know, this is the stragglers hour, and about half hour ago, it was fairly busy in here, but it is indeed winding down. They've got another 12 minutes or so to vote here across the state of Ohio. Now, a lot of people have talked about what the turnout would be here in Ohio. We know that Clinton campaign was a little concerned about how things would go around the state, especially here in Hamilton. Hamilton, we've seen a shift more from red to blue over the last couple of cycles. Barack Obama carried Ohio, obviously, in 08 and 2012. But this looks to be perhaps a Donald Trump state going into the last 10 minutes of this race. We can tell you here they had record turnout for early voting. The turnout today on actual election is not going to be as robust as we've seen in the past, but still we think they may get to the figure that they had in 2012 across this county, which was 75%. About an hour ago, it was just teetering around 70%, so a pretty decent turnout. All in all, we'll know soon enough here exactly what the turnout was, Brian.
All right. I was just saying, to come back to this, the base of the Trump base, the heart of his movement, was about workers, blue-collar workers, in effect, uneducated workers or high school workers. Okay, but let me just put this on the table. They believe that trade has hurt them, and they believe that immigration has hurt them.
And their incomes have not risen along with the rest of the country.
That's where I'm going on this. That's why I say the income part of this story has not served them well. The question is...
Hold on, Larry. We've got to go to the WFLA in Tampa as we pursue our decision zone here to see what the local affiliate down there is reporting from the key state of Florida.
In 2012, it was 11-15, but past performance is no guarantee of future performance, so we really don't know. But people smarter than me that have really looked into this, their consensus is that by 9 o'clock, we probably won't know who the winner is, but we will know if it's an early night or a late night.
Right. So by 9 o'clock, if someone is in a significant lead, we should know at that point.
That's right. There's certain states like Florida, like Ohio, Wisconsin. These are important states that are going to be firewalls for Hillary Clinton. Certain states Donald Trump loses, like Florida or Ohio,
and
is
that's
game over.
WFLA, our affiliate down in Tampa. Now let's listen in to Al Sharpton on MSNBC.
So when you couple that kind of dismissive, you have nothing to lose, and you couple that with the Obama legacy, I think that we started hearing in the last several days a lot more energy in the African-American community. It would be difficult in some areas to get the same vote and the same passion that you had for President Obama. For obviously this was history making for African Americans, but you seriously are getting a lot of people saying we don't want to go backwards, and he clearly, Donald Trump has, between the birther issue and between telling us we have nothing to lose, black unemployment is half today that it was when George Bush left office. We have a lot to lose, and I think a lot of people are voting because they have that in mind.
Reverend Al Sharpton, our friend and colleague here, Reverend.
There on MSNBC. So a couple of issues that were just raised, Sarah, exactly what Al Sharpton was saying about unemployment, how that's feeding into the vote, and also Florida being perhaps a bellwether of how late tonight's going to go.
Well, we were in Hillsborough County, Tampa, the Tampa affiliate, and that's a key county. Tell us who wins Hillsborough County, and we'll tell you who the President of the United States is going to be. In 19 of the last 20 presidential elections, Hillsborough has predicted the Florida winner. Donald Trump has no path to the presidency without Florida.
Larry, you've said earlier tonight, before we went on there, you have a couple of paths for him to get there.
He cannot get to 270 unless he wins Ohio, Florida, and North Carolina. He cannot. He just cannot. Oh, it just doesn't work. I've been playing with the Real Clear Politics. You can put your own states in and your own numbers. You can't. Now,
those are about to close.
If he does carry Ohio, Florida, and North Carolina, then he's in the game. Then there are some narrow paths that he can take. That's why I think when we get these results from these states, and they're going to come fairly early, it's really important.
Just a quick point about Florida. The African-American vote in Florida, they said it was going down, but the actual early vote numbers, it was way up. And the Hispanic vote turnout, early vote turnout, was almost double what it was in 2012. Those are significant impediments for Donald Trump.
I think that's right. When is the Republican Party finally going to have their, we've said over and over again, year after, when their come to Jesus moment, if I can, make a joke. I mean, it's
another
election after election. There's all these promises.
Don't start with me. Don't start with me. Because I've been saying this as long as I've been doing CNBC.
Decades, yes.
But I think the turnout is big. It seems like the turnout is big. And that's a mixed blessing for Republicans. Because as you noted, if the African-American vote is picking up, the Hispanic vote, I mean the non-Cuban Hispanic vote, upstate in Florida, if that's picking up, those are not Trump voters. That's for darn sure. Now, it could also be his base, the uneducated white blue-collar workers and so forth.
I want to get back to that at some point, because I don't believe that's his real base. I've been dying to say that all night. The average Trump voter makes $72,000 a year. It's not these uneducated, poor working people.
Guys, we'll take a quick break here, but do not go anywhere. The poll's about to close in these 3 states. 2 of them toss-ups, Ohio and North Carolina, as Larry just mentioned. We're back live after this. Your Vote election night coverage. I'm Carl Quintanilla, along with Kelly Evans, John Harwood, and Michelle Caruso Cabrera.
We are just moments away from polls closing in these 3 states, including Ohio. Here are the big developments so far tonight. NBC News projecting Donald Trump the winner in Indiana. That's the home state of Trump's running mate, Mike Pence. NBC News also projecting Trump the winner in Kentucky. NBC News projecting Hillary Clinton wins Vermont. And our CNBC's Scott Cohn reporting that poll closings are delayed in 2 North Carolina counties, 8 precincts in Durham County, and 1 precinct in Columbus County.
You know, John, we were just talking about how much President Obama, how much the incumbent president, the situation with the unemployment and other things has contributed to what looks like support for Hillary Clinton.
I think it contributes in a big way. Look, American politics is tribal. People know what side that they're on. There are very few undecided left. And the better you're feeling about your team, the more likely you are to turn out and say, let's keep things going. So even if only a quarter of the voters say they're doing it because of Obama,
here we go.
It helps.
We have a CNBC election alert. Polls just closing in Ohio and West Virginia, and we are monitoring the situation in North Carolina. NBC News projects Donald Trump is the winner in West Virginia. That gives him 5 more electoral votes. The race in Ohio, a key swing state, is too close to call at this time, and North Carolina too early to call, with polls still open in 9 precincts. So right now, Trump has 24 electoral votes. Clinton has 3.
Let's talk a little bit more to John Harwood. The point's been made. We don't know yet whether it's going to be an early night or a late night.
That's right.
That's coming up soon, but it's not happening right now.
But what you have is a lot of swing states, battlegrounds, where Hillary Clinton went into the election with a narrow lead. So those leads could be overcome. But if they're not, if the polling is right, that means that the Electoral College is likely to fall her way. We've just got to wait and see. So Ohio, for example, is a state that Donald Trump went into Election Day believing that he was going to be up. He could still hold it. But if Hillary Clinton has the big night and ends up carrying Georgia, which was too close to call, carrying Ohio, then you could be looking at a wide electoral margin.
And make this clear. Donald Trump needs Ohio, but Hillary Clinton doesn't necessarily, right?
She does not. If you look at the 2012 map, Barack Obama won 332 electoral votes. He won Ohio. That gives him a margin of 62 votes, electoral votes, beyond the 270 that he needs. So you can take away Florida from that. You could take away Florida and Ohio from that.
And she could still win if she commands every other state.
That is right.
Got it.
We're going to take you back into the decision zone here and listen to the New Hampshire Democratic chairman. Take a listen.
Right now, we have with us the party chair, Ray Buckley. Ray, thank you for being with us. Can you explain at this point what is happening in Dover?
The polls are going to remain open in all of the wards in the city of Dover until 8 p.m. So anyone who received that email, or if they're just hearing this for the first time, they can go down to their local ward. If they're unregistered to vote, they can register to vote. Just bring a driver's license, and they can register and vote. And if they're in line at 7:59, the polls stay open until everyone has voted.
Okay, Ray, thank you. Let's switch gears now. I want to ask you, do you feel as though the state of this presidential election over the past several months, do you feel as though that has impacted the governor's race right here in New Hampshire?
Well, I think that we do very well. Democrats do very well here in New Hampshire in the gubernatorial election, whether it's a presidential year or not. We've done very well in the last 20 years, in fact. So I do think that perhaps the governor candidates would have received a bit more notice, but I really think that both Chris Sununu, the Republican, and the Democrat, Colin Van Osten, ran fantastic campaigns, got their message out, and I think we're going to have a good turnout tonight.
Okay, and one last question. In your eyes, as the Democratic Party chair, what happens if Donald Trump becomes our president tonight?
You know, I think that'd be a very difficult thing to occur, so I'm not really sure. A lot of Americans would have to think about what it means to be an American.
Okay. How confident are you that that won't happen?
100%.
Okay,
I trust the people of America.
Okay. Ray, thank you so much for being with us.
Chair of the Democratic Party in New Hampshire speaking there about the outcome. Remember, there's several key gubernatorial races that are also up for grabs on this election night. Let's get to our CNBC reporters who are fanned out across the country, including in some of the key battleground states, and we're going to turn to two of them right now. Scott Cohn is standing by in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we begin with Brian Sullivan live from Columbus, Ohio. Brian?
Hey, Kelly, thank you. And you guys noted, as true, it is too close to call here in Ohio. And if history is any guide, it might be for a while, and it might be a long night here in a very key state with 18 electoral college votes at stake. We say that because history has shown in the last 6 presidential elections, the winner has not won by more than a margin of 51.5%. Barack Obama won in 2012 with just 50.6% of the vote. And, of course, everybody we've talked to has suggested the polls, everything else, it is likely to remain close for a long time. It's a very, very important swing state, as John Harwood has noted. It is one that went for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, although the majority of the polls do have Trump leading by a very, very slight margin. Time will tell. Now, here's what's interesting. The story may not be so much as who is behind us as who is not behind us. And I'll tell you why I say that. This is the Trump-Pence room, as you might be able to tell, and people will be trickling in. But what you don't have a lot of here are official Ohio GOP representatives, guys, because they are hosting a separate party about 3 blocks away here in Columbus, and Senator Rob Portman is holding his own party. So instead of having one sort of unifying GOP, Trump, whatever it is, party, what we've got is 3 sparsely attended, 1 Trump, 1 Ohio GOP official, and 1 Rob Portman. So kind of sums up the state of national politics here in the key swing state of Ohio, and we are going to be here all night. The coffee's brewing, guys. I'll send it back to you.
Yep, certainly. Thanks, Brian. Let's get to North Carolina, too. CNBC's Scott Cohn standing by, where all the polls there were supposed to close, but there's been some issues there tonight, Scott.
That's right, Michelle. Here's what's going on. We broke this at the top of the hour. The North Carolina Board of Elections voted to keep polls open for as long as 1 hour. The extensions range from 20 minutes to 1 hour in a total of 9 precincts, most of them in Durham County. Here's why that's important. Durham County is a big Democratic stronghold. It went by roughly a 3-to-1 margin for Barack Obama in 2012. It's a heavy African-American population there. Early voting in North Carolina, the African-American turnout fell well short of expectations, or at least well short of 4 years ago. It was more than 50% turnout 4 years ago, even though Barack Obama lost the state in 2012, about 45% this time. So that's why you saw a big effort to get out the vote on Election Day, particularly by the Clinton campaign, with Hillary Clinton actually winding up her campaign with a midnight rally here in Raleigh. So they were trying to make up for that. And the officials in Durham County, the local Board of Elections, wanted to extend the voting in these 8 precincts in that county by an hour and a half. The Board of Elections said that that was excessive, with the poll workers having been there since 4 in the morning, so they settled on this. It's short of what the Democrats wanted, and these precincts in that county is key if Hillary Clinton wants to wrest North Carolina away from the Republicans this time around.
Scott Cohn, thanks very much for that. We want to dip into MSNBC as well. The Washington Post's Robert Costa. Take a listen.
Well, I don't think anybody's terribly surprised.
A legitimate organic confidence that they're feeling tonight in terms of their hopes for the presidency.
Just got off the phone with multiple Trump insiders. They say Donald Trump is up in his apartment at Trump Tower, sipping Diet Coke, watching television. A lot of his aides and family members are saying, Mr. Trump, maybe turn off the TV for a little bit until all the polls close, but he's watching everything. And they keep getting these reports of high turnout among white working-class voters in some of the states they've been targeting, like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, and elsewhere. At the same time, they're not all brimming with confidence because they see high turnout for Democrats in those same states.
Bob Costa with Washington Post at the Washington Post newsroom tonight. We'll be checking back in with you. Appreciate your time tonight, sir.
Robert Costa of the Washington Post. Some call him the Trump whisperer because he has serially broken news on the Republican side this entire cycle.
He's got the confidence of the Trump team. He talks to them regularly. I want to add one thing to something Michelle talked about before. What if Donald Trump wins Ohio and wins Florida? I'm looking at an electoral map. If he wins Ohio, if he wins Florida, and he wins Iowa, takes all those 3 away, He's still only at 259 electoral votes. He needs to take away more votes than that.
It's a narrow path to victory for him, for sure.
One more dip into the zone here. We go to NECN. Jeff Saperstone talking about the Senate race there in New Hampshire. Take a listen.
Yeah, we're at Kelly Ayotte's headquarters here tonight, as a matter of fact. She will be here a little bit later. This is one of the closely watched races in the country. This Senate race could actually decide the balance of power in the country. She is running against Maggie Hassan, the current sitting governor here in the state. She's a Democrat. This has been a close race from the start. $100 million has been spent on it. Ayotte has distanced herself from Donald Trump at the top of the ticket just at this time. Ayotte really distanced herself after that Access Hollywood tape came out. In fact, today when she voted, she said she wrote in Mike Pence. She stuck to her word from a few weeks ago when she said she was going to write in Mike Pence, and she in fact did that. So she's obviously trying to court some of those independent voters that she fears could go for Maggie Hassan here tonight. Polls close in New Hampshire at 8 o'clock. It could be a very long night based on the polls in this race. Back to you.
This is a very closely watched Senate race. Kelly Ayotte whipping back and forth about whether or not she was going to support Donald Trump. It's been incredibly tough. And I think all our jaws dropped when we heard $100 million on that Senate race. It just speaks to how much is on the line in the balance of power.
And I got to tell you, Republicans told me at the Republican convention, we will spend whatever it takes to protect Kelly Ayotte. She is a valuable rising star in a party that needs women stars.
And a lot of the funding that would have been channeled into Donald Trump's presidential campaign by a lot of big money donors who weren't comfortable with him went into those Senate races, helping to turn out not only New Hampshire, but a couple of others over that $100 million limit. Let's bring in our guest, Ed Rogers, former Reagan White House staffer and former Bush Quayle campaign staffer. He's here along with former New Orleans mayor and current president and CEO of the National Urban League, Marc Morial. Guys, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marc, what do you, I mean, there's still a lot in play here. It's very early. What are you thinking at this hour?
Well, I'm thinking that there are 10.7 million more voters today than there were in 2012. Two-thirds of them are people of color. And I think the interesting thing is how the American electorate has changed significantly. So while Trump has made a very significant effort, I think, to appeal to white working class, if you will, Americans, I do think that a good bit of that is offset by the changing electorate. The other factor in this election, even though people say the millennials may not be turning out in large numbers, the millennials as a percentage of the electorate is so much stronger. So we have a very different electorate today.
And I wonder what you think about this, too. A lot of the younger voters seem to be part of this unaffiliated surge that we're seeing. A lot of the turnout, if they're not with the party, they're often some of the younger people. How do you figure out which way they might be going?
Generationally, the younger generation, people are not coming in to a party. And that's a problem for both parties, but mostly it's been a problem for Republicans lately. I saw some numbers earlier that first-time voters were breaking for heavily for Hillary. A big majority. I mean, that does set a pattern. So we'll see. I mean, Trump is something of an anomaly. Tonight we'll know the beginning of whether or not Trump is the Republicans' kidney stone or the Republicans' cancer. So we will see.
Neither one of those sounds very palatable.
Is there a third option?
It could be, but it'll
Hold on one second.
It gets to the Senate races.
Hold on one second, Ed.
In a meaningful way.
We're just going to listen in to Ann Thompson speaking over there at MSNBC.
There was a lot of concern about that, low voter turnout, but fortunately we didn't see any of the voter intimidation materialize, and fortunately we had very strong voter turnout today.
There have been lawsuits filed in Nevada, in North Carolina, other states across the country. What about here in Ohio?
Well, things went so smoothly today, we were able to avoid any of those last-minute lawsuits that we've seen in past years. I would give the voters of this state an A for their great behavior today.
How soon can you expect numbers? You had huge early voting numbers here. When will we actually start to see those returns?
In a matter of minutes. We're 7:45. We're about to go live with our election night reporting system, and so voters will know voters will know what was done in Ohio here in just a few minutes.
Polls closed about 15 minutes ago at 7:30. Any problems with people late voting trying to get in at the last moment?
Of the 9,000 precinct locations, we had one that we know of that there are lines in right now, but that should dissipate shortly, and everybody's vote will be cast, and we'll begin the counting process.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. So that's it, Brian.
Ohio Secretary of State speaking with MSNBC, saying that he sees, Michelle, very strong turnout in the state.
Speaking of turnout, Ed Rogers, what do you think when we see this huge turnout that we're seeing from Latinos, the African-American vote? Trump bragged about how he wasn't running a traditional campaign, didn't have a strong get-out-the-vote movement on the ground, didn't spend nearly as much as Democrats did on highly contested states. When you look at the final analysis here, if he had done the traditional things, could he have won this, or was his message one that...
It's frustrating to think how easily Trump could have won this race. People don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. People think the country's moving in the wrong direction. This was the year for a change candidate. This was the year for an outsider. He just became so repulsive and couldn't control himself. Never got where he needed to be in suburbia for a Republican.
The race isn't over yet, we should say.
But I also think that separate and apart, the way he started his race, the way he started his candidacy. He started his candidacy attacking Latino voters. And then also, he was dogged persistently by his own personal record. His record with women, his business, if you will, problems that really, they were all, the race in many respects has become about Donald Trump more than it is about anything else.
But they were both dogged by their personal records, right? I mean, they competed with each other on that front.
Hillary sort of crowded Trump out there for a few days at the end.
But there's something...
the Republicans on trustworthiness, if you take just that core issue, 32% of people, I think, thought Donald Trump was trustworthy. Maybe 33% for Hillary Clinton. Might have been slightly the other way. On that core issue, it's clear that people were extremely disenchanted, Mark, with both.
And that's not going to go away. If Clinton wins, she'll be the first president ever going into the White House with a legal clout.
It's not unusual for many voters to have to vote for the lesser of two evils. That's not unusual in American politics. Maybe to a greater extent we may have seen this this time. But I think Donald Trump struck a chord. The way in which he attacked private American citizens, not his competition in the race, not other politicians, but private American citizens, it may have crossed the line with many Americans. And I think that that's been an important factor in what we're going to see tonight.
Really quickly, let's listen to a man who knows the Clintons well. That is James Carville on NBC.
Yeah. James, if it works out the way that you hope that, that she gets the presidency, the country is still badly fractured.
Absolutely.
But and she's a known factor. Everybody knows about her. And on the other side, they don't like her very much. They're already talking about a target-rich opportunity in the Congress of the United States. So what does she do right away if she wins? We don't.
Well, the one thing is, once she gets in office, she becomes much more popular. She's a much more popular office holder than she is candidate. I think that what she's got to do is acknowledge the fact that all of these Trump voters and people, they have something to say. They want to be heard. And I think she's got to, and I think a lot of Democrats say, you know, these people are really hurting. They're trying to say something. You know, she should reach out and say, you know, you were sending me a message, and I heard that message, and you came out. And when I say we're stronger together, I hope she says, when I say together, I mean everybody. I'm not, you know, I don't mean just the people that voted for me.
Should she go to some red states and listen?
I think so. I actually do. I think before she's inaugurated, I'd love to see her go to some parts that were heavily Trump areas and sit and talk to people.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
I honestly mean it. That's a good place to start.
Look, it's not a bad idea. And there are a lot of places that she can go. But I do think that there are a lot of Democrats that are like, these are our people. To a large extent, this is why a lot of us became Democrats.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, we want to win the election, and we have a great coalition. But, you know, these people are, they're screaming that they want to be heard about something. And I think, you know, my guess is that she gets it. I really believe that.
What are your thoughts on the Comey factor? The polls didn't really detect
one of the most important figures in the Democratic Party there, James Carville, speaking on MSNBC. We're going to discuss a lot more about what he was talking about, much more from the CNBC Decision Zone. Live feeds coming in from across America. Right now, you're looking at NBC affiliates in Tucson, Arizona, Columbus, Ohio, New England, MSNBC, New York, and NBC, CNBC's Your Money, Your Vote election night coverage. We're going to continue the discussion right after this break. Don't move.
early NBC News exit polls. Among voters with households income of 200,000 or more, Clinton leads 47 to 45%, and that is a flip from the last election. And now I want to talk about Obamacare. According to early NBC News exit polls, 46% of voters nationwide feel that Obamacare went too far. That compares with 31% said it did not go far enough. 18% is about right. These voters broke overwhelmingly for Trump, 80% to Clinton's 13%. But comparable numbers are either okay with the law or think it did not go far enough. Kelly, back to you.
All right, Steve, thank you for now. Also want to bring your attention to NBC News saying Ohio Senator Rob Portman has won his race. John, there's so much here at stake for the Senate, which way it goes. It seems too early to tell, but what's the significance of Portman hanging on?
Well, first of all, they badly need Rob Portman to hold that seat. Rob Portman is a very solid member of the Senate, and he's somebody who represents the more moderate wing of the Republican Party. The fact that he was running so far ahead in his race, ahead of Donald Trump, is going to be a point of argument about what kind of Republican the party needs to offer. This is someone who came out in favor of gay marriage. He has a son who's gay. He announced that publicly and became the first Republican senator to support gay marriage. It looks like he is building a broad coalition that may be a model for Republicans.
Ed, regardless of what happens tonight, even if Donald Trump wins, there's got to be a lot of soul-searching in the Republican Party about what it is and where it's going. Is it Rob Portman or is it Donald Trump?
Well, one thing's for certain, there's not a lot of Trumpkins on the ballot that are winning tonight. Trump doesn't have a movement like we've seen with Ron Paul that could actually come in state parties and take over, or try to have a voice in the RNC chairman. I think it speaks to Trump being a kidney stone rather than a cancer.
But in North Carolina, there was some movement with Pat McCrory kind of tacking himself closer to Trump the last couple of days. That say anything to you?
It does. People have had to do a very awkward dance. People on the Republican ballot have had to do an awkward dance of, I'm for Trump sometimes, but not really, and not too close and not too far. He's like a fire. Too close, you get burned. Too far away, you're out in the cold.
Mr. Mayor, I got a question for you. We heard from James Carville earlier. When are you and James Carville going to bring home Louisiana for your party? Is that going to happen tonight?
Not tonight. We're working on the national vote tonight.
We've been talking about some of these Senate races, Portman, of course, in Ohio, Rubio in Florida. But take a look at some of the lines today. This is a dynamic we've not talked a lot about. Even with all the early voting, John, and 46 million people casting votes early, wonder how much of this would have been worse if it hadn't been for that.
Well, look, early voting is becoming a huge part of American culture. And Democrats have become more organized in the last couple of elections, more capable of exploiting that. And it's going to be a challenge for Ed's party to make some headway. In addition to that's an organizational and it's a data issue as well as a demographic issue.
But let's make a point, and that is 3 states, Ohio, Florida, and North Carolina, actually cut their early voting days. And so we had a trend to an expansion of early voting. Many more states offer early voting. And I think what this suggests is that we need an expanded early voting in most states to make it more convenient for people to vote. It used to be that Republicans loved early voting. Then when Democrats figured it out, then it became the target of those who advanced voter suppression.
There are 2 things that are true, reinforced by this election, about early voting. It's here to stay, and Democrats are better at it than we are.
You know, one other thing, when this all started and when it became so clear that so few people liked either of the candidates, everybody thought, oh, turnout's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
It appears thus far to be just the opposite.
And I wonder who those people are. I'm not sure yet.
But we don't know that overall, though, Michelle.
Good question.
Some of the vote may have been front-loaded, so we don't know whether overall turnout's going to exceed what we saw in 2012. I do think, to the mayor's point, you've had these attempts to restrict early voting. I don't think we have seen huge effect of those laws in terms of actually suppressing the vote. So an attempt to hasn't succeeded, I don't think.
All right, we are coming to you live tonight. We'll be right back, Ed. With limited commercial interruption, we're going to take another quick break right here as the final votes cross in 16 states. You can see them on this screen there, plus Washington, D.C., so a huge batch is coming your way. We'll have results, instant analysis, all straight ahead. CNBC's Your Money, Your Vote election night coverage.
Welcome back. Moments ago in Louisville, Kentucky, Senator Rand Paul, former presidential candidate, winning re-election tonight. Let's take a quick listen to this as we take stock of some of the other Senate races that we are watching closely in Florida, New Hampshire, and elsewhere.
Thank you, Kentucky. It's gonna be a big, big night for conservatives in Kentucky. I want to thank each of you for giving me the privilege of defending the Constitution for 6 more years. I take that privilege seriously and will honor my oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. This national election has been long, loud, and divisive. While there is much that divides us, there is also a uniquely American hope for the future that unites us. My hope is that we will find common ground. My hope is that we will rediscover that our prosperity is truly bound to our...
All right, we have an election alert for you. Polls have just closed across 16 states and Washington, D.C., and there are a lot of calls being made. NBC News projects Hillary Clinton is the winner in Connecticut, Delaware, D.C., Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. Altogether, that now gives her an additional 72 electoral votes. NBC News projects Donald Trump is the winner in Alabama, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. That gives him an additional 33 electoral votes.
NBC News projects that Florida is too close to call at this time. That's a key battleground states for both candidates in this race. Pennsylvania, too early to call right now, also a key battleground. I repeat it, also a key battleground state. New Hampshire, also too early to call right now. That's a state where Trump has spent a lot of time. Missouri, too early to call. Trump is leading right now. Maine, also too early to call. Clinton is leading there. And take a look at the electoral map right now. Clinton now has 75 electoral votes. Trump has 66.
All right, that's a lot of numbers. It's going to take us a few minutes to absorb those. No barn burner surprises yet, John. Would you agree?
No question about it. It will be a big surprise if Hillary Clinton ends up winning Georgia, for example, which is too close to call. But no, we haven't seen one yet. I do want to go back to, we just were listening to Rand Paul in Kentucky declaring
If you were wondering
victory.
what he's been up to, he's been running for Senate.
Well, exactly right. And I think there's a message in that. There was a moment where Rand Paul was considered the hot new thing within the Republican Party, and maybe the libertarian movement that he represented was going to be the future of the party. Rand Paul flamed out in the presidential race. Gary Johnson then ran as the Libertarian nominee with two highly unpopular Democratic and Republican nominees. And what's happened to Gary Johnson? He has gone straight down. Libertarians, if they, in fact, are going to be the future of the Republican Party or American politics, they have got a lot of work to do.
It's a great point, Sarah. When you talk about I think the average American will say they are fiscally conservative and socially liberal.
Or socially moderate.
Socially moderate, right. And yet...
Sarah's liberal, but
I'm not liberal at all. I'm very conservative.
A party doesn't exist for them.
It is a bad word.
A party exists for them, the Libertarian Party, and yet it got nowhere.
It did. Now, I would argue this is a strange year, and the Republican Party was much more about populism this year than it was about libertarianism. And the Libertarian Party ran a candidate who had almost as many gaffes as Donald Trump. They just weren't as publicized. And if there was a year that an independent candidate should have done well, it was this year, where you have two candidates who were so deeply unpopular, deeply untrustworthy. It may bode well for the two-party system moving forward. I'm dubious about that. I think we're moving to a place where we're going to have more parties over the next decade. But but this year is
just went down.
He did a poor job. He made so many gaps.
But let's not
He didn't know where Aleppo was.
Larry, if he gets to the 5% of support, which is not out of the question, right? I mean, it could.
He was up at 12.
But that's exactly. So he gets that support. All of a sudden, they're getting federal funding for the next time around.
Get in the debates, right?
Trying
to get to 15.
Totally legitimized.
That's what we need.
This is a huge
25
development.
people debating. I mean, the guy.
Don't talk Nelson.
Let's put it this way, guys. Evan McMullen is doing better in Utah than Gary Johnson is doing in any state in the country.
And by the way, Gary Johnson, I think I'm a social conservative. I don't know. Gary Johnson's for legalizing drugs. I mean, the guy's a pothead. He wants everybody to be pothead.
He's a libertarian. That's a libertarian belief.
That's the joke about libertarians, right? They're conservatives who want to smoke pot.
That's right. And they probably want to legislate that you have to smoke pot. So he's going nowhere.
John raises a very good point. John raises a very good point about Utah. If Evan McMullen were to pull out a win there, it would be the first time, certainly in modern political history, that an independent candidate
Since George Wallace in 1968, when I was in the 6th grade.
But he's not going to do it.
But it's, you know, he's the last polling had him down a couple points.
He can't.
It's probably not.
What's surprising is that Republicans are coming back to form here. I mean, despite everything that's happened with Donald Trump, the fact that he's basically blown away all the sort of the three-leg stool of the Republican Party, at the very end, when it comes down to November 8th, Republicans are still voting for him. And this election looks...
That's the tribalism that I talked about before.
Exactly.
That is what our politics is.
This election looks exactly like every other election so far. There's nothing different in the outcome from any other election.
Some of it is tribalism. Some of it is the fact that Hillary Clinton was so unpopular and has a long record of scandal that has plagued her political career. Had the Democrats nominated somebody different, I would project...
People would say that about their Republicans.
Well, that's true. I agree with that. But no, I believe more Republicans would
Hang on,
vote for
everybody.
that.
Hold on one second,
Just want to listen into Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager, speaking on MSNBC.
Of the secretary voting today in hometown of Chappaqua, New York. How did she spend the rest of her day after that early morning vote?
She is right now in Midtown Manhattan watching the results come in. She usually likes to spend the evening with her husband and a very few aides. You'll recall in Iowa, for instance, they invite their very inner circle up to their room to watch with them. I think this is something they're doing, they feel comfortable doing tonight, and I think that's basically where she'll be until she comes here, you know, in the middle of this glass structure with the glass. I think this is the symbolism they wanted to express tonight, and you know, she'll be ready for it.
We should tell our audience that the crowd behind you at the Javits Center is watching the results on the big screen, and so from time to time you'll hear some reactions from all of them as we're talking with Amy Farnes. One of the really interesting aspects of this race has been the relationship between Hillary Clinton and the Obamas, and it kind of culminated last night with that rally in Philadelphia with both of the Obamas attending, a huge crowd. Some well-known musical stars performing. As you've watched this, we know from your reporting and others that it has been a relationship with a lot of tensions early on, and all of that seems to have evaporated in these final weeks, particularly with the First Lady out on the campaign trail as a surrogate for Hillary Clinton. What can you tell us about how that relationship developed to this stage?
They have come a long way, that's for sure, Susan. They started, you know, as bitter rivals. They came together after then President-elect Obama asked her to be in his cabinet. He wanted that kind of team of rivals aspect going on there. You know, they bonded and really got to know each other, I'd say, when she did serve on his cabinet. And they had a few interactions where Secretary Clinton really vouched for him, really was his chief cheerleader on certain issues on health care. She came together in one cabinet meeting and said, this is our time to do this, and urged people to get behind the president and do this. And, you know, there were other moments abroad, too, where they crashed a secret meeting together in Copenhagen that they found out the Chinese were holding with a bunch of other countries. So I think that was the moment that aides really credit, actually, them coming together and respecting one another.
But of course, it has also become a race that is a referendum on President Obama's presidency. He wants to see his party succeed him. So can you talk about that aspect as well?
Of course, and that is a big part of this story. You know, everyone knows that he wants her to win. Obviously, for her own, he thinks she's the most qualified, but he also has a lot riding on this. This is his legacy on the line. You had Donald Trump say that he wanted to basically cancel out everything he's done, President Obama's done in the last 8 years, and that obviously would hurt President Obama. And so he has a lot at stake here, and that's why I think you saw him campaign so hard this week. 3 stops yesterday, a lot of stops last week. This is why the First Lady has been out there so much for Secretary Clinton and also for their legacy as well.
Will you compare the way that Hillary Clinton approached her obvious historic mantle as the first female major party candidate this time around compared to her attempt in 2008?
She's done a few things that, you know, I was curious to see what she would do, particularly coming out of 2008. But she really embraced the historic nature of her candidacy this time. We didn't see that as much last time. Up until the very last minute of her last campaign, she was kind of questioning, you know, whether she should really support or talk about the historic nature back then, and she decided to. She needed some prodding from aides, but she felt like it was the right thing to do. This time around, you saw her in the primary talk about it. When she accepted the nomination, she talked about it again. This is something that's been central to her campaign, and I think that's exactly why they chose this venue here tonight. When she said 18 million cracks last time, she's doing a full 180 now, and she's here, and there will be a mention and a nod to that, I'm sure, as well.
We'll come back to you in just a minute. Steve Scully has more results.
Susan mentioned earlier that Senator Schumer of New York had asked Evan Bayh to run in Indiana. Also, Senator McConnell asking Senator Marco Rubio to reconsider and run in Florida. He has been declared the winner in Florida, so that is a Republican hold in a year in which there are 24 Republican seats on the ballot this year and 10 Democratic seats. 4 key presidential battleground states. These 4 states will determine who is elected the next president. Let's go through the results as we have them right now, beginning with Florida. We all remember what happened back in 2000. Look how close it is right now, with about 30% of the vote now reported in Florida. Hillary Clinton with 3.5 million votes. Donald Trump closely behind at 3.4 million, a difference of less than 1 percentage point between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in the Sunshine State. North Carolina, both candidates wrapping up their campaign visits yesterday in Raleigh, North Carolina. Again, a very close race. Hillary Clinton holding on.
Still win far.
Mr. Mayor, Florida has changed.
She has about 52% of the vote compared to just over 45% for Republican Donald Trump. Ohio, no Republican has won the presidency without winning Ohio. Right now, with 12% reporting, Hillary Clinton is ahead with about 800,000 votes compared to 669,000 for Donald Trump. Still a lot of numbers to come in from the Buckeye State, but Hillary Clinton with a slight lead. And in New Hampshire, it's 4 electoral votes.
Florida, I guess I must have spent a total of a week and a half there. The support for Donald Trump in the northern part of the state is overwhelming. The support in Tampa is very strong. I'll admit it was a little bit weaker in Orlando than I expected it to be. And I think basically the Palm Beach down to Miami vote, it's going to be Democratic, but I don't think it's going to be as strongly Democratic as it used to be.
Mr. Mayor, we've been looking at the gender gap tonight and the fact that women are not coming out for Donald Trump, but traditionally Republican women, married, suburban Republican women, are not apparently coming out for Donald Trump. And this has been an issue for him in the earlier polling. Should he have done anything differently in your mind to get that group behind him?
I'll tell you that in two days. It'll take me about 2 days to figure out, or maybe 3, or maybe longer, to figure out if something different had to be done. If he wins, you know, sometimes when you win, you don't think anything different had to be done. And if you lose, you think everything different had to be done. It's hard to analyze in the middle of an election. He's going to overperform with the white male vote. I think he may do a little bit better with the African-American vote, both in terms of the percentage that shows up and his percentage. He spent an awful lot of time going back to August in every speech talking about what he wanted to do for the African American and the Hispanic communities. I think that's going to pay some dividends for him. This is the first Republican candidate that spent as much time on that as at least I remember. Only one I remember ever doing that was Jack Kemp.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We do have a call to make. The Fox News Decision Desk can make a call in the Florida Senate race. Marco Rubio will win the Florida Senate race against Patrick Murphy, the Democratic challenger representative. This was a lot tighter than people thought it was going to be, actually, heading into this race, and that could go to what we were just talking about, that breakdown of the Hispanic Latino vote. But it is possible also that that vote split tickets, and it might be a factor. But Rubio wins this race. Remember, he ran for president, decided he was not going to run for Senate after he lost that primary battle, and then said, you know what? I think I am.
Well, and he was excoriated by Trump and others during that primary battle for missing so many days of work in the Senate while he was working on his presidential contest, and tried to run as an outsider when he was running for president by saying, this is a reason why I'm not returning to the Senate, because I hate the way Washington works, and I hate the gridlock, and I hate the system. And then when he lost the presidential bid, decided he didn't hate the Senate as much as he suggested that he did, but he's won there. Sometimes politicians say things that aren't true. I know, Chris, I hate to be the one to break it to you. So he's won there tonight, but it's interesting to watch because Rubio was just booed by a group down in South Florida who were calling him a traitor because he wound up saying he was going to vote for Donald Trump and that he would back Donald Trump. So there's a question about whether some of the Hispanic community in what are traditionally blue-leaning counties would come out for Rubio, even though they're not Republicans. They voted for him in the past because they liked him. Whether they did or they didn't, he had enough votes tonight to reclaim that seat.
I tell you who's happy is Mitch McConnell, because this was a major win for his ability to possibly hold on to the Senate majority in the Senate. And if Patrick Murphy won this race, he had President Obama, he had Hillary Clinton, he had Vice President Biden, all campaigning down there, and it was closing. Now it seems that this is one race that the Senate is going to hold on to, and the other questions are in Missouri, New Hampshire, and others tonight.
Tight races. So they're almost finished voting in Arkansas, and we're keeping an eye on all the latest numbers for you as the 2016 election results continue to pour in.
Bill O'Reilly joins us coming up. We're recapping the biggest races so far and so much more live from Fox News election headquarters. That's all still ahead.
Welcome back, everybody, to New York City, Times Square, the crossroads of the world. And there's our beautiful Fox News map up on the side of a big building.
This is
in New York City.
That's right. This is the national popular vote, and you can see the breakdown there. Right now, 50.2% for Donald Trump. 9,377,301 votes have been cast for him, and there you see Clinton at 46.3%. And you can see the different counties and precincts basically coloring in with the red or the blue throughout. And we will monitor this throughout the night.
Remember when Times Square used to be filled with exotic dancers and bars? Now it's electoral college results. What a shift.
This naked cowboy is there somewhere. Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly, who you normally see at this time as the host of the O'Reilly Factor. We're also joined by syndicated columnist, Fox News contributor, Dr. Charles Krauthammer. Bill, your take about where we are and what we're seeing.
Well, Trump's competing pretty well, I think, across the board. But the army of people that his campaign expected to come out that were disassociated with polling and things like that, that hasn't materialized. But, you know, the Florida thing, he's got a chance to win Florida because of the panhandle vote. In Ohio, it's hard to tell because we don't know where the votes are coming from right now. North Carolina, a little dicier for Trump there. But he's competing in Virginia, although Northern Virginia usually comes in later, and then that'll sweep Hillary Clinton. But I think that at this point, it'd be foolish to make any kind of broad assessment of what the vote's going to turn out to be. It doesn't look like there's going to be any shocking upsets or shocking vote tallies anywhere. It's a slug out right now. And Trump needs it all to go in his favor. So, Charles Krauthammer, dude, I make any mistakes? You're my guy, always trying to keep me on the straight and narrow. Did I say anything wrong?
So much error, so little time. So, look, at this point, I think the trends of the sort of the general analyses about the favorable ratings would tend towards Clinton. She actually beats Trump in the exit polls on honest and trustworthy, which is a pretty odd finding, and it's at odds with the latest in the polls. I think what's really interesting is, I think it was noted a little earlier, is that Trump got 28% of the Hispanic vote, which is almost exactly what Romney got. I think the big difference is that there appears to have been an enormous increase in the registration of Hispanics. So they turned out, and it's the turnout in very high numbers, which I think is so damaging to Trump right now.
But you're not seeing any kind of sweep in Florida, for example, a heavy Hispanic state.
Yeah, but
and it's very, very possible.
But there just aren't
very
enough
possible
Hispanics.
Trump can win Florida.
But there just aren't enough Hispanics in Florida or elsewhere to turn a big advantage into a sweep of the state. We always knew it was going to be close, and right now it's hard to say how it'll end up, but she's slightly ahead. And for her,
yeah, but I don't think
for her this is not a
I don't
West,
think
a
Trump is
must-win state.
underperforming. Right. See, I don't think Trump is underperforming. I don't think he's overperforming. And as Brit Hume pointed out, if he doesn't overperform in some place like Michigan or Pennsylvania, she'll win. He's got to overperform in one of those key states. But he's not underperforming, even though some of the exit polling is dubious on his behalf. Would you cede me that?
Look, Bill, underperforming in this election is not reaching 270. So that's the only underperformance that matters. You want to compare to the latest exit polls or the latest polling that was done on the eve of the election, that's fine. But the fact is that he has to carry the big three swing states, Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio, and to penetrate the blue wall. Right now, that looks like a distant prospect.
Which state do you think that Hillary Clinton will take out of those three?
I think it's likely she'll take Florida, and it's a toss-up whether she takes North Carolina. Ohio, I think he has the edge, but again, she doesn't have to have all these states.
Well, where do you think her strength is going to come in Florida? It's pretty much a dead heat now. And then the northern counties in the central time zone are the ones that remain to be counted. And that's Trump territory. So how is she going to
I think it's
state?
a 2% lead now. And with over 80% of the vote in, that is not a dead heat. It's a substantial advantage.
Okay,
And if
I don't have that latest information. You know?
Yeah, well, it helps to have it.
Clinton is up by 2 in Florida right now as we speak?
I think it was 49 to 47, something like that. We can verify that.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then the better odds are that she'll win. But remember, that is Trump territory up in the north in the central time zone. Okay. Well, in the overall overarch of the vote, has anything surprised you?
What surprises me is the two main issues that propelled Trump's campaign, that won him the nomination, and that people were looking to say there's sort of an ideological revolution going on in the country, and that is immigration and trade. What is very striking about the exit polling is that on immigration, the country is roughly 3-to-1 for legalization, which you wouldn't have known by looking simply at the primaries. But even more interesting is the one where people think there was more of a national consensus to overturn the general.
Markets and asset classes are responding to the way the lead in Florida has changed hands a couple times tonight.
That's wild. What is it?
Carolyn has a nice way. She'll suggest I do something. And I figure I better go along with it, because if I say no, the suggestion will get stronger and stronger, and I'll just do what she said anyway. And I do appreciate it. But it has been a long, strange trip, as we quote Jerry Garcia. But when I first ran for the state, I've been state's attorney here for 8 years. Somehow I became the youngest lawyer in the state, the youngest state's attorney in the state. Now I was running to be the youngest senator in our history. But I remember my parents and Marcel's parents, our children standing around me in Montpelier at the State House, which is only 100 yards from where I was born, where I was raised, where I lived, right up to the time that the young woman from Burlington.
We take you from there to a live shot of Rob Portman's podium in Ohio. The Republicans hanging on to that Senate seat, as they did in Florida with Marco Rubio. When we see Rob Portman take the lectern, we'll bring it to you.
We just heard from Pat Leahy, by the way. He is now the most senior member of the United States Senate. Took office in the mid-1970s, 1975. Wow. Rob Portman's way down on that list.
By the way,
and chair the Judiciary Committee, and very important to judicial confirmations, and of course the confirmation.
Brian Boreal is back with us, by the way.
Mark and Larry are here.
No,
let's get to Brian Sullivan. He's in Ohio. Brian, give us some color.
Yeah, in fact, I just got back from the Rob Portman party. And like I told you guys earlier, there's 3 separate parties. This is Trump-Pence. There's GOP. Portman's got his own thing. We literally just ran over there and ran back over here. A much more jubilant mood so far, although the mood here at Trump-Pence certainly has picked up in, let's call it, the last half hour, 45 minutes, as some of the latest Florida numbers have come in. Obviously the Senate not getting quite the attention, guys, as the presidency, but I think that sort of the deep market watchers, and maybe John Harwood could tell us if this is incorrect, would say the Senate maybe not as important from one seat perspective, but certainly all the combined races together certainly had their drama, but no drama for Senate in Ohio. Fairly easy victory for Rob Portman. The mood is jubilant over there. The mood is getting a little more upbeat here at Trump-Pence, guys. But again, as you've noted, maybe too close to call right now, and could be a long night. Back to you.
All right, Brian, thank you. That's Brian Sullivan in Ohio for us. And by the way, when it comes to the state of Ohio, Larry, you brought up this issue on the economy earlier. Ohio voters asked who better handles the economy. 45% Clinton, 49% Trump.
He should be 12 points ahead on that. I mean, look, we need to let's look at the Hillary thing here, okay? She's ahead in some of these economic polls, or near, tied. that shouldn't be the case. She has an agenda. You know, Elizabeth Warren has an agenda. Bernie Sanders has an agenda. Hillary Clinton is, in my opinion, going to follow their agenda. Basically, the way I see it, we'll get back to the judges in a second. It's a key point. Hillary wants to take money out of the private sector to expand the government, okay? She wants to take money out of free enterprise, make the government much larger, including a takeover of health care.
I think that's
about this.
You know,
That's a big issue in this election.
I don't think Hillary Clinton wants to take over the private sector. I think Hillary Clinton wants to stimulate the private sector, help the private sector grow. But there's a dynamic role for government to play. This is a mixed market economy.
And guys,
we need a strong government. We need a strong private sector. And I don't think she's going to, quote, follow anyone. I think she's going to steer her own course.
Well, it's also the case that, guys, if Hillary Clinton wins the presidency, even if Democrats have the Senate, Elizabeth Warren is not going to be able to implement her agenda in the Senate. The Senate's going to be very closely divided because people like Rob Portman are winning their elections, people like Todd Young in Indiana, and Republicans are highly likely to control the House.
But she's still have a lot more power.
But the question is,
but how much can you move the Congress? We've seen in the last 8 years how difficult it is if you don't have partisan control.
If you, right, this is key. If you're ready to make a deal,
showing Trump slightly ahead in Florida with 3,990,000 votes, 300. So that's, call it 3.99. And Hillary just behind him by about 4,000, 3,986,000. So you're talking about a 4,000 vote difference there as of a few moments ago. But that, I mean, anything can happen there. They are counting as we speak. So let's figure out what all this means and whether they can foretell anything from this. Not me. I don't know. These guys know, though. Yeah, they're the experts. Carl, you see anything you object to so far?
Well, things change really fast. State Board of Elections now says the tech count in Florida is 4,266,000 for Trump to 4,172,000 for Hillary Clinton. The panhandle of Florida, Okaloosa, Escambia, Bay, Walton, these very heavily Republican precincts on the western side of the panhandle are starting to come in, and he's now opened up a...
That's good for Trump. That's supposed to be Trump territory.
Yeah, he's now opened up a 1.1% lead. And this will change again within the next 2 or 3 minutes because there's the central time zone is now coming in, and those counties are overwhelmingly Republican.
So if you're advising Trump tonight, how do you like these numbers? How do you like the way it stands at this point, given what counties they've counted?
I'd be interested in what Starwald says, so I'll speak first and he can correct me.
No one's ever said that. No, just kidding.
Tough crowd.
I say it every night.
Man. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the Southeast, and I would have thought that he would run slightly ahead of what Mitt Romney did because he's the homeboy. He's got Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, right.
He's not. And Broward and Palm Beach, he's not running ahead of where Romney is. And that's not a good sign for him. Now, he's also trailing in Hillsborough, which Hillsborough is a bellwether county. It is voted for the winner 19 out of the last 20 elections.
Wow.
It's voted for the national winner, and right now it's for Hillary Clinton. Again,
what part of the state is that?
That's in the western edge of the I-4 corridor in the central part of Tampa. And I'd say this. I'd say that we got to take this all with a grain of salt because so many votes were cast early. And those get counted first and get reported first.
So those are in these numbers we're looking at, these 4 million.
We're looking at. And then as the evening goes on, the question is, how much better does somebody do on Election Day than they did in the early vote?
Chris?
Well, look, the issue here, as we always know, is the I-4 corridor, which is from Orange County. Well, it goes all the way to the coast, both coasts, but it's from Orange County, which is Orlando, and then Tampa and St. Petersburg on the other side. Republicans have been doing worse in the Tampa-St. Pete area because it's gotten younger and it's gotten more diverse. Now, the problem is up in Orlando, that was good country for Obama. I was expecting to see that Clinton would not do as well in Metro Orlando as Obama did. I expected her to underperform, and so far that's not the case. So far she's holding her own with these voters.
Yeah, I expected her actually to do worse because this is an area where there's been significantly, for Trump to do worse, I'm sorry, and her to do better. This has been an area of a large amount of the middle class of Puerto Rico has fled to Central Florida and is now living in Orange County, waiting for the economy back home to get better, and they've registered to vote. And Democrats say in Orange and the surrounding counties, Orlando and the surrounding area, this is where the Puerto Ricans are registering as, and Central Americans registering as independents, not Democrats.
And stand by, I want to get to Dana, but first I want to go over to Bill Hemmer at the Billboard so we can drill down a
As
little bit deeper into
independents,
what
not
we're seeing.
Democrats.
Stand by, I want to get to Dana, but first I want to go over
these
to
developments here and just some of what Carl was talking about there, and you look at the total vote number. This is the panhandle that you guys were just discussing here, so we'll keep an eye on that. It's almost like, you know, you've got a weight up here and a counterweight down here, and I was just ticking through this I-4 corridor. Let me go back in here for a moment here. This is, you know, Tampa to the west, it's Orlando in the middle, it's Daytona Beach up to the north, and let's clear that off here. This is Hillsborough County, okay? So she's got about a 6, look at the percentage on this, at 6%. You know, 4 years ago, Obama was at 53%, okay? So you examine that and you store that data point away. Then you come up the I-4 corridor. This is Orlando, Orange County. At the moment, she's at 60% to his 35%, which is a pretty decent number, outperforming a little bit percentage-wise from Obama 4 years ago. This is Seminole County, largely Republican. Mitt Romney had 76% of the vote in that county alone 4 years ago. So how's Trump doing on the margins right now? He's a little bit below that, about 73%. The Trump team had talked a lot about Daytona Beach for some time leading up. This is one of the 2 counties that Romney flipped 4 years ago. And so in Volusia County, Daytona Beach, Trump is right about 55% comparison to 4 years ago. So he's well outperforming the margin there. Up here in Flagler, another county that Romney flipped 4 years ago, it was 53.7. And at the moment, it's 59%. So now you start to look at the raw numbers, Carl, and you look at perhaps 35,000 votes in this county, perhaps 20,000 in another, and it's as they say, it's real money after a while, and that's what you're starting to see just a little bit. This is Palm Beach down here. Trump has Mar-a-Lago. She's just under 58%, and Obama last year was right about that number, 58.6% compared to Romney. So you can fish and feel and find a lot of what adds up to just a super tight race between Clinton and Trump, 4.2 to 4.1. 4 years ago, the raw numbers were, you know, this is 75,000 votes 4 years ago in a state where you had 8.5 million cast. I think, Carl, we were talking over the weekend that you typically get, what, about a 20 to 25% increase?
Well,
and new votes over a 4-year period? Well, does that apply to this?
Well, that's what happened between 2000 and 2004 was a 25% increase. This was expected to be a year in which there's not going to be a dramatic increase, and we are having a significant increase in a lot of states. I would say something. Bill has put his finger on something. I used to have a place, excuse me, in the Panhandle. Mm-hmm.
I can cover for you for a moment.
I used to have a place in the Panhandle. It's got more in tune with southern Alabama than it does with southern Florida. And
is that Escambia? What was that?
Well, I was in Walton, man. And they used to call it the Redneck Riviera. But affectionately, right. You also look though at the eastern part of the I-4 corridor, Volusia and Flagler. And that's Daytona Beach. They have NASCAR. That is more blue collar. That's more working class. That's more sort of middle America than the increasingly diverse Tampa, St. Pete. And so they share something in common, those 2 parts of Florida, and that may be a reason why Trump is doing a little bit better than Romney was.
So wait, I want to get to Dana, but I have to ask you, Chris, as somebody who can actually has been part of the team actually making these calls and trying to figure out what counties have yet to come in. Yeah. What do the numbers we have so far tell us from the counties that we've already gotten? Can you tell anything? I mean, with Trump slightly ahead, is it just the Panhandle now we're waiting for, which is heavily Republican, or do you believe there's a trove of Democratic votes still out there to come in?
Yeah, and I tell you what I'd do. I'd get that 2000 video ready. I'd get those hanging Chad videos.
Oh, come on.
I'd get those queued up. Well, it couldn't be any daggone closer, could it? I mean, this is about as tight as it gets. Yes, there's going to be more vote count that comes in from the Panhandle. Yes, it's going to be overwhelmingly Republican. But if you look at how can we see Jacksonville?
Sure can. It's Duval County up here in the Northeast. For this year, you're at 49 to 47.
And show Mr. and Mrs. America what it was last time.
All right, 2012.
So I thought Trump would be doing better there. I thought that it would be better for him there. Where are these blue-collar white voters that need to storm to the polling places for him? He needs them to show up. And who is going to show up, and apparently who is showing up, are a lot of first-time Hispanic voters. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be tight, 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 tight.
Let's go back to Volusia or one of the Panhandle counties. This is where the supporters are showing up who didn't show up.
Santa Rosa, where Huckabee's hanging out tonight.
I saw him in the green room.
I was going to say, I think he's downstairs.
He looks tan, though.
He has a very large house on the beach. Let's go down there. I've seen
Could you be
it.
more specific where?
I tell you, when I think back about elections past, and I think about 2000 to 2004, what we were doing when you were running Bush's campaign in 2004, Carl, is that we were watching the I-4 corridor because we wanted to see what was happening and the difference in the percentage of the vote between Bush and Kerry over that 4-year period. Did it go up or did it go down? Did it go higher or did it go lower? And we come back to 2004, and it's how we won the state. And I remember the night you were on the air saying that we've won Florida. And the Democrats were on the air saying, no, we've won Florida. And we look at the numbers and we run up from Hillsborough County here in Tampa, where he was a 6-7 point winner in Tampa. And we followed that line up into Polk County, then eventually Orlando, where you look at the margin then. It was about a point. And that's when I was working at another shop then. But we were able to make the call and say, you're wrong. Bush has won Florida. And now we move to Ohio to watch the outcome.
Well, if Trump manages to pull off a victory in Florida, I mean, it's absolutely critical to him. He cannot win without Florida, and that could open up everything for him. And if there's any position where the networks have to call Florida for Hillary Clinton, Trump knows he's done. If he retains Florida in the win column, it's a totally different ballgame because there's no other state that he must have that has even been called yet, right? That there's nothing in the questionable category that's gone toward her, unlike some of these Senate races. But if he loses in Florida, thanks to, in part, a large Hispanic turnout, Dana, it's fascinating because so many Latino voters who have been reacting negatively to Trump felt like this would be their day where they could come and seek their revenge, if you will. And maybe that hasn't happened on a national basis thus far. We don't have the evidence for that yet. But if it happens in the singular state of Florida, that's enough.
Florida, and also I think that you've seen a lot of focus from the Democrats in Nevada. So those are two states where you would have more Latino voters. I also want to see in Florida, if Trump's enthusiasm, which he had a ton of, can beat her organization. And it really comes down to that. Earlier on in the campaign, Donald Trump said that organization is overrated. He might be right. If you have that kind of enthusiasm that you can get people in like the Daytona Beach, as they were talking about, or in that Panhandle, you saw his rallies there. They were amazing.
20,000 people in some circumstances.
So he's got the enthusiasm. Those people probably did come out and vote. But then quietly, the Democrats were registering, I said earlier tonight, 600,000 new Latino voters since 2008 to the Republicans registering 50,000.
Wow. What a story this is going to be with all eyes on Florida right now, a must-have state for Donald Trump. And we continue to look at Ohio, to look at North Carolina, to look at Pennsylvania, all of which are too close to call at this hour, 8:42. Here in the East. Brett, it's getting exciting.
It's getting very exciting. Just back to Florida very quickly, a couple of quick points in the exit polls. If Cuban Americans, 53-41, Donald Trump. Other Hispanic, 70-25, Hillary Clinton. And I just want to point out as we go to break, when I was in Tallahassee for that recount, we were in the back of a Ryder truck covering those things, and Bill Hemmer was at another network with a big spread and a lot of buffet food. It was much better, but we got through. And as we come back, we'll have
but now you have the shandy.
The shandy is ours. And as we take a live look at Times Square tonight, the fair and balanced analysis from our Fox News election headquarters continues. This is getting interesting, folks. to call. We do have a House call out of Florida, and this is interesting. It's Florida 26. We can call Representative Carlos Curbelo. The Republican will win against former Representative Joe Garcia, the Democrat. Now, why this is important is that this is a quintessential battleground district in a swing state in Florida. This has a heavy Latino presence. The fact that the Republican can pick up this race is significant. It includes Miami suburbs, all of the Florida Keys. You have a situation where Curbelo holds on to this seat, and it tells you a little bit, perhaps, about how the presidential race is that tight. It is the swingiest district of a swing state.
Swingiest. I like that.
Okay.
No, we're seeing a lot of signs now that this race is tightening and that this thing's far from over. And we want to talk about it now with our panel. Dana Lash is here, Mike Huckabee, former governor, Richard Fowler, and Mark Thiessen. Great to see you all. So let me start with Governor Huckabee, who's right over here. Yeah, not in Florida. He's here in the region.
Thank you.
I tell you, I thought I was invisible there for a while.
And what do you make of the razor-thin margin now? But Trump, according to the latest number I just saw, was up 102,000 in Florida.
Well, look, we're all hanging by Chad, and I think, it may be that way all night long. But I do think the panhandle vote is going to be over 80% for Donald Trump. It's going to be overwhelming. But one of the things that I take note of is that the people who ran with Trump are doing well and winning. The people who ran from Trump, the Republicans, they're getting hurt tonight. And I think that says a whole lot about where this election is going to go.
Dana, what do you think?
Well, I hope it's not too close to call. I don't want to see another 2000 take place, but I do think it's interesting, the turnout as well. I heard a lot about enthusiasm. I think some of what plays into that enthusiasm is just no other better way to put it, hatred for Hillary Clinton. There are a lot of people who really dislike her. And that's a great motivator for a lot of people who normally...
They're cheering you outside. They agree with your point.
Well, I mean, when we talk about enthusiasm, and I hate saying it, but is hate, it sounds so bad, but hatred kind of a candidate's policies, let me put it like that, of a candidate's policies, that really is a good motivator to get people out to change that and to put a stop to it.
Mark Thiessen, we've got Florida. Trump is up right now, according to these numbers. Ohio, still too close to call, but Trump's looking pretty good in Ohio, or has been coming into today at least. We have not been able to make a call in Virginia. No call in Virginia, which she was supposed to be running away with up until, basically the Comey announcement about, 11 days ago. No call in Pennsylvania. Same story there. She was supposed to run away with that. This race could be turning right now.
It could be very much so. And that, Virginia, remember, the same thing happened with Eddie Gillespie in the last election, where everybody thought that Virginia was going to go very easily to the Democrat, and he came within a hair of winning that state.
The point is the pre-election day polls in Virginia are a little
exactly. But there's an interesting pattern in two states that you mentioned that's emerging, in Ohio and Florida, which are must-win states for Donald Trump, is that in both of those states, the Republican Senate candidate has run way ahead of Donald Trump. I mean, Rob Portman has run the best campaign of anyone on any ballot in this election. He was predicted to go 18 points ahead of his rival. What did he do in Ohio to do that? He reached out to Democrats and labor unions and independents. He ran a positive, optimistic campaign. He reached out to women voters and tried to expand beyond the Republican base. And he had a fantastic ground game, 6 million voter contacts in the state that only had 5 million votes the previous year. And now it's too close to call for Donald Trump. He's won. Florida, Marco Rubio's won. We still don't know what's happening with Donald Trump. So there's something that these Senate candidates are doing in these same states that Donald Trump is not doing on a national level, and they are way ahead of him as a result, because they're campaigning on a hopeful, optimistic agenda. And it's good for conservatives to learn from this night that message still sells. That's what still sells in the Republican Party.
Okay, Mark, but Donald Trump's doing pretty well. He's hanging tough in all of these states. And Richard, tonight, aren't Democrats a little worried as they look at this map?
We always thought this was going to be a close election.
Not this close.
True. But what I will say is this. I think what you're going to see tonight is the difference between enthusiasm and a turnout machine. I talked to the campaign before I came over here, and the numbers that they gave me there is that in Florida, the early voting among Latinos, they have 1 million Latinos have early voted, 2 times what it was in 2012. So while Donald Trump might have some enthusiasm on his side, what the Democrats have in Ohio, in Hamilton County, Ohio, which I think this is what that race is going to come down to, is they have a ground game. They are literally going to homes and saying, we are taking you to the polls, and the Trump campaign doesn't have that. I think that's going
gonna
but
be
you're talking about the early vote in Florida. That's already in. It's in this batch. So we
Brett,
have this vote already in. So now you're looking at a Florida that is changing by the minute.
4 counties, Miami-Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach County, and Hillsborough County. Hillary Clinton's up in all 4 of those, and there's still more votes to come in. I'm from Broward County. You can win the state right there. In 1992, Bill Clinton ran up the numbers in Broward County, and Hillary can do it again tonight.
But Richard, I think one of the things you've got to realize is that, yes, you've got a great ground game. You've given people a sandwich, a shot of whiskey, and a ride to the polls. But I'm telling you, Donald Trump's people are going to the polls and voting for him, and they didn't have to do anything other than being told it's election day. Let's get out there and go for it.
That's fair, but I think what you also
they're swimming at flood tide to go vote
what
for
you
him.
also see is that this race is a demographic shift in this country, right? Donald Trump is depending upon a group of voters that are sort of the Hispanic. There's a larger Hispanic population, a larger African American population. People doubted the African American community would come out, and yes, we're not seeing 2008 and 2012 numbers, but those elections, I would argue, are an anomaly because we had a black person at the top of the ticket. In this race, Hillary Clinton is performing better amongst African Americans than John Kerry is, which is the same with liked race, which is why I think she'll win Florida pretty handedly after all the votes come out.
Dana, let me just say one thing. The RNC would push back hard with what Richard is saying. They would say that the RNC had a pretty organized ground game, even though the Trump campaign didn't. The RNC made up for what was lacking in the Trump campaign's on-the-ground effort.
No, I think that's a good point. And the Trump campaign did lack a ground game in a number of states. I mean, that's pretty indisputable. But the point is that, as you just mentioned, the RNC was able to make up for that. But for all the talk of the amazing ground game that we've heard from Hillary Clinton, and I have to say, I grew up hearing the Clintons have a fantastic ground game. Would we not see greater disparity in some of these early results coming in from states like Florida, which that went blue last couple of times? I mean, Florida, this was something that Hillary Clinton, I think,
about
felt
Michigan?
pretty confident. Exactly. And yet, look at the results coming in.
Well, let me make
look at the new voter registrants coming in as well.
Let me make one point on that. So what the Clinton campaign is depending upon is high population counties, which we know historically take a longer time to come in because there's more votes to be counted. So Broward County is going to take longer to come in than the Panhandle just based on population. So you have to wait for these votes to come in. I guarantee you at 11 o'clock, this map's going to look a lot different.
So you think we're going to get right down to the wire and then boom, all these are going to go blue? Is that what we're going to do?
Well, that's what we saw in 2012.
I'll give you credit if that happens.
You're going to see big.
All right, guys, stand by. Joining us now with more, Bill Burton, former Deputy White House Press Secretary for President Obama. Bill, great to see you. So let's just start with Virginia right now.
Day.
Yeah, and to you. Let's just start with Virginia, where right now they're saying that Trump is actually running up the score in the rural southwest of that state, and he's performing well in the Commonwealth of Virginia tonight. Now she's still waiting for that vote on Northern Virginia, which tends to be more Democratic. But you tell me whether that's a surprise to Democrats and Hillary Clinton's campaign.
No, not at all. I think that if you look at the geography and the demography of Virginia, of course those votes are going to be for Trump, but the massive migration of people has been to Northern Virginia, Arlington, Fairfax County, those counties in there. That's where the largest share of the vote is. That's where Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine are running strong, and that's fundamentally why she's going to win the state.
What about Florida?
I think that there's a lot more drama to the state, but there's still counting votes. Florida, I mean, Broward County is barely counted yet. The numbers right now, I think, are predominantly from areas that are strong for Republicans, not totally, but it's missing a lot of key counties that Democrats do well in. So in Florida, once again, Trump needs to win Florida in order for us to even keep paying attention to this race tonight. And it's not obvious that he's going to.
Well, he's up right now by 100,000 there, according to the latest poll. But you've got a situation where Trump's up 100.
Without votes being counted in Democratic strongholds, sure.
Well, some haven't been counted, but some have. And it seems, according to our election analysts, that state is very much in flux. And they can't say that, oh, yeah, all the outstanding vote is from Democratic counties, so, you know, it's done, or he's going to go down. They're not saying that at all. They're saying this is a dog race, and that we might be looking at another 2,000, another 2,000 when we had the hanging chads and the U.S. Supreme Court had to decide what a nightmare that would be. We only have 8 justices. We need 9. But go ahead, Bill.
Well, unfortunately for Donald Trump, he would need to win a lot more than Florida or be tied in Florida for it to even matter for which way Florida goes.
But he hasn't been ruled out in any of his key states yet, Bill. He hasn't been ruled out in any not in Florida, not in North Carolina, not in Ohio, not in Pennsylvania, not in Michigan, not in Virginia.
Not yet, but it's early and they're still counting votes, and the Democratic strongholds have not been counted yet.
I'm feeling very confident about how things look in the whole country. In Florida, yeah, it looks like a tie right now. And Donald Trump has more votes on the board. But even if Hillary Clinton loses there, she's in great shape over the course of the rest of the night.
Hey, real quick, Bill, for Senate race, how do you think it looks right now? And was it poor recruiting with Patrick Murphy and Evan Bayh if they couldn't pull off those wins?
Well, you know what? Patrick Murphy and Evan Bayh ran very good campaigns. Evan Bayh was against a pretty strong tailwind of Mike Pence being at the top of the ticket. Campaigns. Evan Bayh was against a pretty strong tailwind of Mike, the popular incumbent Senator Marco Rubio, who ran far ahead of where Donald Trump is in the state. It was very difficult. I don't think it was a matter of bad recruiting. I think that Republicans did the best that they could in states that are used to electing Republican senators, and that's what you saw happen tonight. But Pence at the top of the ticket in Indiana was a very hard thing to overcome there.
Bill, we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
I don't know what he said. That was exciting. I want to find out. More than 150 electoral votes at stake at the top of the hour in just moments from now.
Polls close in 14 more states. Just 3 minutes, 20 seconds from now. Results as they come in. And guess what? It's pretty tight. Hi out there. This is a tight race outside Fox News election headquarters.
$156 electoral votes. Among the critical states, Arizona, Colorado, and Michigan. All three have been contested by both candidates. The Republicans typically win Arizona, but it's been somewhat in play this season, and both candidates are going for Colorado and Michigan, which was a late introduction into the dogfight category. And it is 9 o'clock here in New York, and polls have just closed in 14 more states, representing another 156 electoral votes. Fox News can now project that Hillary Clinton will win her adopted home state of New York based on Fox exit polls. Fox can also project that Donald Trump will win the states of Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming.
In Nebraska, one of just 2 states, along with Maine, that does not use a winner-take-all system of awarding delegates, Fox News can project that Donald Trump will win 4 electoral votes. It's too early to say who will win Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which represents that state's 5th and final electoral vote. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton is ahead in New Mexico, although we don't yet know whether she will prevail there, which is really interesting because Donald Trump visited New Mexico in the final days of this campaign, a blue state.
Clearly, they saw something in their internal polling that the rest of us may not have seen in the public polling. It's also too early to project winners in perhaps the 2 most important battleground states of the hour, Arizona and Colorado. Trump has been counting on Arizona's 11 electoral votes to keep his presidential prospects alive. That was part of the Romney coalition. While Mrs. Clinton hopes that Colorado's 9